Welcome to Mrs. True Crime. Today's video is an in-depth look into the serial kidnapper Jamelske. It's a tale of delusion and survival. If you are triggered by anything dealing with torture and or rape, feel free to click off this video. Perhaps check out my gaming channel, Retail Me Games, for some lighthearted content. If not, I'm Nicole. Let's get started. New York is the place where dreams are made of. I mean, there's at least 5 songs I can think of that elaborates this fact. From acting to singing, or even doctors to contractors, New York is shiny with optimism, hope, and inspiration. But, as with many states, there's an underbelly of dread, or more specifically, crime. Though as of December 2017, New York City has seen a massive drop in crime, with 286 homicides, in comparison to 1990, with 2,245. While that is very impressive now, in 1988, with violent crimes making up 196,396, it was all a waiting game for when the state would self-destruct. I'm just truly sorry for what I did. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I'm just sorry for what I did and how it's affected everyone, and God bless them all. Those are the words Jamelske said upon hearing his victim's statements before he was sentenced to 18 years to life for the kidnapping, rape, and torture of 5 women over the course of 15 years. John was born in Dwight, New York, an only child known for his reclusive behavior. When he was of age, he married Dorothy Richmond, and together they had 3 sons. And though John worked for a few local grocery stores to help provide for his family, he was anything but a simple or even nice man. He often screamed at others when he didn't get the coupons he wanted. He was also a bit of a hoarder, collecting bottles and cans, though some he would redeem for money, as well as abandoned cars, kitchen appliances, chairs, and sofas. Despite all of this, he wasn't exactly poor. He talked his parents into investing in stocks, which grew, and when they died, he inherited their small fortune. And though his home was surrounded by spacious, modern homes, John's own house had become a junkyard that he constructed a fence around to keep people out, but also to keep people in. Allegedly, when he lost his job in the 1980s, his behavior became even more sporadic, with him having an open affair with a teenager, while his wife, who would soon be bedridden in 1988, watched idly by. His affair inspired him to cruise around in his 1975 Mercury Comet for more young women to shower him with affection he could no longer require from his wife. First Chief Assistant District Attorney Rick Turnfio stated that Jamelske wanted a sexual relationship with a monogamous partner who he was sure didn't have any diseases. Perhaps that's why in September 1988 he lured 14-year-old Kirsten into his car. We were going to have sex, there was no doubt. We drove straight to my mom's house. John said of his first victim, placing a chain around her ankle and hooking it onto a wall. He kept Kirsten in a deep well beside his mother's home. On Larry King Live, Kirsten stated that she had been drinking with friends and was trying to get a ride to a friend's house when she entered John's car. The witnesses nearby told her not to get into the car, but she unfortunately did anyway. She didn't remember much of the car ride, but she woke up naked and cold. John made her write down everything they did together, from daily rapes to when she brushed her teeth. He would even record sexual videos of the two, which Kirsten later stated she had no recollection of. Eventually, he moved Kirsten in 1989 from the well to a small dungeon he constructed. It held 2 rooms that could be accessed through his garage. The rooms had no electricity, plumbing, or open windows. Instead, there was a plastic bucket for a toilet, a foam cushion as a bed, and cold water from a hose. It was approximately 12 by 24 feet and sealed off with a steel door that could be locked from either side, but had a padlock on it that only John knew the combination to. He fed her once a day, and every other week he allowed her to bathe with a garden hose. This torment would continue until 1990, when he blindfolded Kirsten, placed her in his car, which was driven by his son, and dropped her off at the airport. John's son said that he had no idea what his father was doing, and that he was told John was taking Kirsten to a surprise. When Kirsten vanished, her family filed a missing persons report, but with such little leads, the case was beginning to fade. It's possible John knew that Kirsten would be missed and made her write letters, leave voicemails, and send audio recording to her family, stating she was okay and would come home soon. When she came back home, she stated she simply ran away because John had photos of her family and threatened to harm them if she ever reported him. So she kept quiet and tried to move past her experience. But in 1995, John would strike again. Cruising, as he called it, once again along the Syracuse streets, John lured 14-year-old Michelle into his car by convincing her to help him deliver a package. And like before, he chained her in his dungeon and she awoke naked and cold. But she wasn't going to go down without a fight. Michelle attacked him as much and as many times as she could, but her fists didn't faze John. He convinced her that he sold girls to other countries into slavery. He then showed her photos of her family and threatened to harm them if she tried anything else. Though her disappearance was reported, she was believed to have simply ran away because of her previous drug use. In 1997, she was driven to her mother's home and told her everything. Afterwards, for several weeks, her mother would notice a man in a car frequently driving by their home. When Michelle confessed that was the man who kidnapped her, they decided not to report him out of fear. Months later, John would return to the streets in search of his third victim. Breaking his list of teenagers, John's third victim would be a 53-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Tina, who he would keep in his prison for 5 months. The order of events went the same as the previous victims. He chained Tina, naked and cold, in his dungeon. She was reported missing, but the investigation fell by the wayside with little to no leads. His torment of Tina was more aggressive and deranged than before, however. He smacked Tina so harshly across the face for crying that he damaged her ear, and even placed a life-size skeleton beside her when she slept as a scare tactic. Months later, he blindfolded her and drove her to the bus station. Immediately, Tina reported her kidnapping. The only problem was that the police didn't believe her, with one detective allegedly stating that usually if someone gets kidnapped, they don't come back alive. Because of their desire to write her off, John would once again strike. In 1999, Jamelske's wife died, leaving his hunger for sexual satisfaction even stronger. And so in 2001, he kidnapped Jennifer, a 26-year-old single mom. Jennifer was on her way home from work, but was caught in a bad neighborhood. There was a small group of men following her, and when John pulled up, she thought of him as a grandfather coming to rescue her. Unfortunately, that wasn't his intention at all. Much like Kirsten, Jennifer didn't recall much of the drive, but as before, she awoke, chained in a dungeon, naked and cold. Over the course of 2 months, John convinced Jennifer that no one was coming to rescue her, and that he was going to sell her for $30,000 if she didn't comply with his demands. Frightened, she followed along with everything he requested. She wrote down the events in the dungeon in a log, read Bible verses to him, and had sex with him as often as he wanted. In July 2001, he pulled a sweatshirt over Jennifer's head and handcuffed her before placing her into his car. After about 30 minutes, he removed the items from her and dropped her off at her mother's house. Though Jennifer was relieved to be free, she would later state that she never told John where her mother lived. Finally home, Jennifer gave a detailed account of the events to the police, even describing the car that she was taken in. Except the car she recalled was a 74 Mercury, and John drove a 75. Still, her accounts of the events were staggering. She said that she was held in a dungeon with the words "Wall of Thugs" written on it in red with a giant peace sign, but couldn't describe where the location was because she was blindfolded. The police tried in vain to find the car, and even a location that could remotely be a dungeon, but without any more information, the case faded into the background. At this point, John had abducted 4 women, and each time evaded capture. That is, until he met 16-year-old Mikia. In 2002, John captured Mikia, sometimes referenced as Macy or Micah, and as his victims before her, he stripped her down and she awoke chained, naked, and cold. At this point, he was pushing 70 and had to pop pills in order to fulfill his twisted sexual routines. But there was something different about Mikia. John had developed a fondness for the girl over a period and had given her a nickname as well as a bit more freedom. She was allowed upstairs, the doors were secured and locked, as well as in his bedroom. Makia decided she was going to be his friend in order to escape, and so far, it was working. John was now taking her outside in public, going bowling, into nearby shops, and on occasion, karaoke. But in April 2003, all of this would finally end. John and Makia had traveled to a bottle redemption center where Makia convinced John to let her call a local church that he had taken her to. He agreed, and she used the phone to call her sister to tell her where she was and what had been done to her. When the two arrived at a Dodge dealership, John was arrested. Once arrested, John played innocent, saying that Makia was his girlfriend, saying, "We have a lot in common. The only thing that she likes that I don't is blue cheese. Is this a problem that I'm so much older than her? I'd just like to get this straightened out so I can go home. I'd like to be with her tonight, if possible." But there wasn't any more going back home for John Jamelske. The police searched his property, and the site was one of nightmares. In the front yard was a 10-foot wooden cross with a small replica of a human head atop it. Inside the ranch home was garbage piled to the ceiling. Every door had a lock. The garage windows had a refrigerator grate attached, blocking any sort of escape. Every space on the floor was covered with food, pots, pans, broken appliances, and other type of items John could find. In the basement were rows of empty bottles, all organized according to size and company, totaling 13,000. Behind the bottles was a 4x4 steel door. Once inside, there was a small tunnel that led to another metal door, and that led into the dungeon. On the walls were the red ink of Wall of Thugs that Jennifer had detailed years prior. Above the door was a small crucifix with the words, "Peace to all who enter here," beside it. In the first room were the words "hate" and "ready to ruckus, so bring on the pain," in red on the walls. In the center of the room was a stained bathtub. An aluminum chair with no seat was positioned over a pail, and a clock radio on top of a portable fridge nearby. In the second room was a foam mat over bread trays. On one of the walls, a red peace sign had been lazily drawn. Other parts of the wall was covered in writings by the victims themselves. Despite the evidence and the testimony from the victims themselves, John refused to admit any wrongdoing, stating that, "I never consider anybody a kidnap victim. To me, somebody that's kidnapped is, you pick out somebody who has money, and you grab them, and you say, 'I'm going to kill them if you don't give me $500,000 or something.'" After statements read by the victims, his tune changed, but he was still very cold about it all. As part of his plea deal, John's assets would be sold off, and the proceedings divided among the 5 victims. Press estimates that his worth is $1 or $2 million. In 2003, the bunker was demolished, and the home was foreclosed by the M&T Bank. It was up for public auction with a minimum bid of $82,000, but there were no bids. In 2015, the property was finally sold for $54,900. John Jamelske is expected to die in the Clinton Correctional Facility, though he's up for parole in 2021. Kirsten, Michelle, Tina, Jennifer, and Makia have been trying to reconstruct their lives for the last 15 plus years, but some wounds are hard to heal. Though each of these women were different in race and age, one thing was true: no one gave up on finding them. 2,300 Americans are reportedly missing every day, and unfortunately, not all of them are found alive or found at all. I'm Mrs. True Crime, and please remember to be kind, be loud, be aware. For more information about Kirsten, Michelle, Tina, Jennifer, and Makia, why not check out some of these awesome links? And if you like what you saw and heard today, why not drop a like and a comment? Maybe subscribe while you're here? I make new videos every Tuesday and Friday, and you won't miss what's in store.